Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In the gleaming lobby of the police station, the atmosphere was tense. The black woman, dressed in an impeccable suit, stood straight, her gaze proud despite the murmurs and whispers around her. The policeman, known for his explosive temper and prejudices, stepped forward. "What are you doing here? You don't belong here," he spat, his voice filled with contempt. Without warning, he slapped her, a brutal gesture that made several colleagues stop. The woman's eyes darkened, but she said nothing, letting a heavy silence settle in. Then, calmly, she took a business card out of her pocket and placed it on the desk. "Chief Inspector of Internal Affairs," she said in an icy voice. The police officer stepped back, frozen. The entire room held its breath. The colleagues who had been laughing just seconds before froze, realizing they had just witnessed a public humiliation, but this time, against the one who had just crossed all the lines. The woman's cold smile vanished as she added, "You know, you just violated the code of conduct. And I make sure that justice is served, no matter who you are." At that precise moment, the police officer understood that his arrogance and racism had just put him squarely in the crosshairs of the most powerful person to control him. And in the world of policing, there's nothing worse than underestimating someone who holds the power over your career. The winds of professional revenge had just blown through the hall. The morning had begun like any other for Captain Daniel Harper. He entered the police station lobby with his usual air of superiority, adjusted his tie, and cast a condescending glance at the civilians and colleagues. Little did he know that today, a simple gesture would change his life forever. Detective Inspector Vanessa Carter, a black woman with an upright posture and a determined gaze, stepped forward to place a report on the reception desk. Harper frowned, displeased to see someone he considered out of place in this setting. His racist thoughts enveloped him like a fog. Another one of those women who think they can meddle in things that don't concern them. Without warning, Harper raised her hand and slapped her hard. The impact made the witnesses jump. The smacking sound echoed through the silent lobby. Vanessa stepped back slightly, but her expression remained firm. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She slowly took out a business card and placed it on the counter. "Chief Inspector of Internal Affairs," she said in an icy, measured voice. Harper paled. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. His colleagues, who just seconds before had been laughing at his arrogance, exchanged incredulous glances. A few murmurs circulated. "Is she the head of Internal Affairs?" Vanessa continues. "You have just violated the code of conduct, Captain. Your behavior will be reviewed, and there will be consequences." Harper instinctively recoiled, a flush rising in his cheeks. His pride had just taken a severe blow, but he tried to regain control. "Listen, it was just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding that could cost you your career," she replied, implacable. At that moment, Harper realized that his reputation, his authority, and his professional future were now in the hands of the very person he had underestimated. He understood, too late, that his prejudices had just placed him in a situation from which he would not emerge unscathed. Vanessa turned on her heel and walked away, leaving behind a hall filled with silence and tension. Every glance she cast at Harper was now charged with judgment and mistrust. What had begun as an ordinary day had just turned into a cruel test of power and justice. And Harper knew, deep down, that the slap he had delivered would cost him far more than his dignity. Since the slap, Captain Daniel Harper's life had changed completely. Every morning, upon entering the station, he felt the gaze of his colleagues weigh upon him like a silent judgment. Even those who were usually loyal to him hesitated to speak to him. Vanessa Carter, relentless, had begun her investigation. She meticulously reviewed the files, past complaints, and incident reports involving Harper. Every abuse, every breach of professional ethics was painstakingly noted. She knew that her position as Chief Inspector of Internal Affairs gave her the power to destroy the career of an arrogant man, but she wanted to be methodical, no haste, no mistakes. Harper, for his part, struggled in this new climate. His anger and pride were severely tested. He tried to downplay the incident to his superiors. It was just a minor altercation. Everyone understands that there was tension. But Vanessa, true to her principles, refused to let it go. Her notes were clear and detailed, her evidence irrefutable. The slap, captured by the lobby's security camera, had become the centerpiece of her case. Harper's colleagues were starting to murmur as well. Some spoke of the slap in the hallways, others brought up old complaints, all realizing that their captain was no longer untouchable. The fear of retaliation from Vanessa paralyzed them. And Harper, powerless, watched his reputation crumble before his eyes. One day, while he was clumsily trying to apologize to a young black officer he had previously humiliated, tensions rose. The officer, his eyes filled with defiance, replied, "You think everything can be fixed with words? Your actions speak louder than your excuses." Harper stepped back, unable to find an answer. Every past action came back to haunt him, and he understood that Vanessa not only had the power to punish him, she held the keys to his public humiliation. The captain then realized that the slap, which had seemed like a simple impulsive act, had unleashed a chain of events he could never stop. Vanessa Carter would not be satisfied with mere justice, she would transform this lesson into an example for all those who dared to underestimate the power of ethics and respect. And in the shadows, Harper felt a cold truth take hold: he was now at the mercy of the woman he had thought he could humiliate. Captain Daniel Harper could no longer ignore the magnitude of the problem. Every step he took at the precinct felt heavy, every glance like a silent judgment. His colleagues whispered, and he knew every word was being reported to Vanessa Carter. Harper decided he had to act quickly. He attempted to offer official apologies to everyone he had humiliated in the past. But his deep-rooted arrogance shone through in every sentence he uttered. I regret what happened. But, it was a tense moment. The faces around him remained impassive, some stifling laughter, others staring at him with a mixture of contempt and defiance. Even the most loyal officers were beginning to lose patience. Harper felt the weight of isolation for the first time. Vanessa, meanwhile, continued her methodical work. She summoned Harper to her office, a bright and austere room where every object seemed to reflect her rigor and authority. She looked at him calmly, almost compassionately, but her words were sharp. "Captain Harper, your apologies are not enough. You have violated the trust of this precinct. You have humiliated your colleagues and you have overstepped the mark." Harper tried to respond, to justify himself, but every word he uttered seemed to backfire. Vanessa presented him with the accumulated evidence, old complaints, unresolved incidents, and of course, the video of the slap, which was already circulating discreetly among the officers. Panic began to set in for Harper. He realized that his attempts to save his career weren't just ineffective, they were part of what Vanessa called the full justice process. Every move he made to defend himself was being meticulously observed and recorded. As he left the office, Harper felt the gravity of his situation. He was at the mercy of a woman he had once thought weak, and who now held all the power to control him. Every corridor he walked through seemed to remind him that he was no longer the master of his own destiny. The slap, which just days before had been an impulsive act, had transformed into a weapon pointed at him. Harper understood that he was going to have to face a difficult truth. In this police station, respect and justice were no longer options, but rules imposed by Vanessa Carter. And she never let the slightest mistake go unpunished. A few days after the slap, Captain Daniel Harper finally grasped the gravity of his situation. The whispers in the station corridors were no longer discreet. Even the most experienced officers regarded him with suspicion, some openly displaying contempt. Harper, once master of his domain, now found himself isolated, watched, and judged. Vanessa Carter formally summoned Harper to a disciplinary meeting. The internal board was assembled, several senior officers, a legal representative, and of course, Vanessa herself. The silence in the room was heavy, almost suffocating. Harper felt his heart race. He understood that this moment would seal the fate of his career. Vanessa spoke, her cold but firm voice echoing in the room. Captain Harper, after reviewing your past and present actions, it is clear that you have repeatedly violated the code of conduct. The slap you gave Detective Carter was not an isolated incident, but the culmination of unacceptable behavior. Harper tried to defend himself, to downplay the situation. It was just a moment of anger, I didn't. Vanessa interrupted him, implacable. Your apologies do not change the fact that you humiliated a colleague and endangered the integrity of the police station. Severe sanctions are now necessary. The verdict came like a guillotine, immediate suspension, followed by a more thorough investigation that could lead to his dismissal. Harper felt the ground give way beneath his feet. For the first time, he understood that his pride and prejudices had led to an irreversible downfall. In the days that followed, Vanessa continued to monitor Harper's every move with almost surgical precision. Every delay, every mistake, every sign of nervousness was recorded. Inspired by her determination, her colleagues began to report further abuses by Harper. The man who thought himself untouchable now found himself under the constant scrutiny of the internal justice system he had ignored for far too long. Harper finally understood that the slap, which had seemed like a simple impulsive act, had unleashed a chain of events he could never stop. Vanessa Carter hadn't just restored justice, she had transformed an act of racism and arrogance into a powerful lesson for all those who believed that authority gave them the right to harm. And as he left the police station at the end of the day, head bowed and heart heavy, Harper knew that his career and reputation were irreparably damaged. The woman he had tried to humiliate had just proven to him, and to all those who had blindly supported him, that true power lies not in authority, but in justice and self-control. A few weeks after the slap, Captain Daniel Harper stood again in Vanessa Carter's office. This time, there were no murmurs, no colleagues to look away. The atmosphere was icy, solemn. Harper knew he had no room for maneuver. Vanessa placed the final file on the table, a complete compilation of all the abuses, incidents, and complaints involving Harper, accompanied by videos and testimonies. Her gaze was firm, but not cruel. There was in her eyes the certainty that justice would be served. Captain Harper, she said calmly, after a thorough review, it has been decided that your suspension will become a permanent dismissal. You no longer hold any position within this precinct. Your badge, your weapon, and all your privileges are hereby revoked. Harper felt a wave of dizziness rising. He attempted one last plea. Vanessa. I can change. I can. She cut him off firmly. This isn't about change, Captain. It's about responsibility. Your actions have consequences. Today, you finally understand what your prejudices and arrogance have caused. The colleagues present in the room, witnesses to the scene, saw Harper turn pale and clench his fists. His pride was shattered, his career destroyed. The captain who thought himself untouchable found himself facing the ultimate truth: justice could not be evaded by rank or power. Vanessa stood up, calmly placed the file in front of him, and concluded. I hope this experience will serve as a lesson for you. For me, for all your colleagues, and for those who still believe that racism or arrogance goes unpunished. Harper left the office, his heart heavy and his head bowed. The slap he had delivered a few weeks earlier had backfired with devastating force. Every step he took outside, in the silence of the corridor, was a cruel reminder that his career, his authority, and his respect were now irretrievably lost. And back at the police station, Vanessa Carter returned to her work, a symbol of rigor and justice. The lesson she had just delivered would remain etched in everyone's memory. In this world, no authority can justify the humiliation of another, and those who dare to cross that line will sooner or later have to face the truth. The slap had been the beginning of the fall, but justice had been the end.